All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to September's PatternFly community meeting. I am Nicole. I'm the PatternFly Scrum Master. I'm going to run us through a few general updates from the PatternFly team before we jump into some presentations. So I'll start with release updates and general updates. So first off, I wanted to make sure everybody here was aware that Hacktoberfest starts in a couple days as October gets started. And if you've never participated in Hacktoberfest before, we highly recommend that people check out the link on the slide. What it is it's a kind of an incentive for people to learn how to contribute to open source projects. And the PatternFly repos are going to participate in Hacktoberfest. So they're going to be repos that if you'd like to contribute to, they can work towards the Hacktoberfest incentives, which primarily is a t-shirt at the end of the month. If you contribute, I think if you get 4 pull requests merged, something like that, as long as it's the same as last year. So their details are at that link and signups at that link. But we just want everyone to be aware that that's coming and to participate with PatternFly if you haven't and want to. Another update is, actually, I'll quickly just spam the links in the chat one more time in case people have joined since I did that the last time. All right, the next update is about PatternFly's next major release. It is in we're in planning stages of that. It's in the works. Currently, the proposed plan involves PatternFly 4, the current version of PatternFly, to be feature frozen by the end of October. So outside of major bugs or things like that, or very specific cases that are determined by the team and by product as needed, we're basically going to be feature frozen relatively shortly, and hopefully our first release of 2023, which I don't have a date for yet, will be our major release. That's what we're aiming for. So just to be something to be excited about. I'm sure there'll be more communications about that the more solidified the plan gets. But we're all very excited. And if you have any questions, absolutely reach out to me. The other thing that I've mentioned before at previous community meetings, but I wanted to just make sure people had a chance to look at the list again. Also, mid-October, we are planning to have quite a number of beta components promoted out of beta, which is something a lot of products are going to be excited about. It's been a while since the last time we've done this, and the list is pretty long, but includes a lot of loved components like the dual list selector, editable labels, the tree view, and the masthead, and the code editor, and more. So if you haven't looked at that list, it's also linked here. I'm not going to run through the whole thing today. I ran through it the last community meeting, so you can view the recording of that if you want to see the list read out by me. And if you have any feedback about any of the components slated for promotion, especially if you think it might warrant a change, we can demote it out of a promotional candidate and continue working on it as we go forward. That's not a problem. So definitely raise your hand if you have any questions about any of the components. Those are the general updates from me. Also, since the last time we had a community meeting, we've had 2 releases. So I've linked the release notes from the previous 2 releases in this slide. If you haven't had a chance to peek at those, I might recommend you do that. They're lengthy because we've been packing in a lot of updates to these releases. But also we're going to go through a handful of the highlights of these releases in some presentations from the core and React teams at the end of this meeting. So a lot to look forward to there. But those are the links if you're ever looking for them to the release notes. All right, that is all from me. So the next item on the agenda is actually an invitation was extended to a project outside of Red Hat who has been using PatternFly and has some story to tell about how that experience has gone and some screens to show. So I would love to invite Stephen to take over sharing if you need to. And
sure. Thank
hi.
you, Nicole. Hey, how are you?
Good. Excited to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. I think I've got a 15-minute slot, Nicole, was it? I like to keep an eye on my time, but guys, keep me honest if
All right.
I'm running over anything, definitely just shout and scream. But look,
Okay, I can do that.
let me share an entire screen. Not used to this in Google Meet. Oh yeah, okay. All right. I am here to can you see that? Is it coming up?
It's coming. It's coming. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, real quick introduction. My name is Stephen Stack. I'm based in Cork in Ireland. I am the open source maintainer, founder, and CTO of rConfig. So make sure you guys are seeing the right slides. Yeah, okay. rConfig is a network configuration management utility that I started building in 2011. And what I'm going to do today is talk you through very briefly what rConfig is and what it does and the problem it solves for network engineers all over the globe, and how I came to rely really heavily on PatternFly and how the user experience was so essential to the success of rConfig currently, and how it helps me develop faster capabilities and features into rConfig. Does that sound okay? All right, cool. Well, look, I'm going to run through a couple of slides. I know I said I had one. I was trying to cram it all into one slide, Nicole, and I said, I'm just going to go through a bunch of them really quickly. So as I said, rConfig, network configuration management utility. So it goes out, grabs configurations from switches, routers, firewalls, load balancers, all sorts of different devices, downloads them, keeps a records of them, allows us to do compliance management on them, push configs out, that kind of stuff, right? It was born out of a need because I found that the other NCMs on the market at the time were slow, clunky, poor user experience. I was network engineering architecting at the time, so just wasn't great. So what did I do? Build my own. That's the problem I'm going to solve. So rConfig, launched in 2011, has over 3 million devices under network management. V3, and I'll talk about the versions again in a second, has over 35,000 installations around the globe in all sorts of businesses, from nonprofits to banks to global tech companies to school systems to churches to everything, right? All sorts of businesses use it. V6 has over 200 installations. V6 was only launched in May, okay, and with 4,000 global users. So our commercial competitors and our open source competitors, Rancid, many of you might be familiar with. It's been around a long time. It's kind of a CLI-based network configuration management utility, oxidized, surfaced, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago. It seems to be not maintained much anymore. Our commercial competitors are Manage Engine and SolarWinds. Enough about them. So moving along. So why use rConfig? It's open source. It's extensible. It provides network automation. There's compliance checking, advanced reporting, and security capabilities built in. Again, just getting through some of this quick because you guys will pick this up pretty quick, right? Main features, multi-threaded processing, right? You don't want to download network configs one after the other. You want to do it in parallel. So we've built that into the tooling. Our largest installation on a single instance manages 12,000 devices on one server, right? So it's quite extensible in terms of vertical scaling and horizontal scaling, and it's extensible in terms of its REST API capability as well. So going to wrap up in the next few slides and get into the GUI, the V6 GUI, and kind of show you how PatternFly works for us. It is an ascending product model. V3 is free to download and use. We do provide gold support for V3, and our professional version is on version 6. So we launched version 1 in 2011. 2015, I launched version 3. We were up to 12,000 users at that point, all around the globe, like I said. In 2019, we launched version 5. I skipped version 4 because I made an attempt at the user interface and it just wasn't working for me. But that's when PatternFly V3 came into the scene, right? And I spent a significant amount of time investigating which user interface platform framework is going to give my users the best possible experience. And I landed on PatternFly. And I touched on that again in a few minutes. And then in 2022, we launched rConfig V6 on PatternFly V4. So that's what we did. Version 3 screenshots. I look back at this with fond memories. of a roll your own CSS, kind of figure it all out, you know, build the framework myself, stitch it all together, you know, oh, how do I color this, you know, element, how do, right, you know, kind of build it all yourself. And it was a roll your own interface, which they liked, right? My users liked it originally back in the day, right? You know, 10, 11, 9, 8 years ago. And they're still using it, right? And I've never had a complaint about this user interface. But obviously for me to sustain the product into the future, it wasn't where I wanted it to be. So then came along version 5 on PatternFly v3. And I don't have a working demo of this at the moment, but just to give you a quick visual indication, the kind of layout, the structure, the menu system is kind of followed suit through the iterations, but obviously that this is far superior in terms of look and feel to v3, right? Now, I'm going to pause here for one moment, and then I'm going to show you v6 and get into the demo version. The reason I landed on PatternFly was because, and I spent hours and hours poring over Team Forest and all sorts of different websites looking for the ideal admin dashboard that I would satisfy, from my perspective, my users' needs and give them. I think the essential component for me was the enterprise feel, that they were getting an enterprise scale commercial product with enterprise look and feel. Okay, and I couldn't find that anywhere. On all of the CSS admin dashboards and panel sites, and you know, download Tailwind and all of these seem to be a little bit too much on the glossy side, right? Nice, lovely. They fit their. It's not, you wouldn't even call it a niche, but they fit their area, right? But PatternFly gave me the most enterprise set of components and capabilities with the look and feel to go with it. So hope that makes sense in terms of a decision. But V6 is where the real kind of magic happened, right? And I did really, really cool things with V6. And I went through PatternFly V4, all of the component framework, everything, to pull in the best of what you guys developed into this tool, right? So I think we'll jump over and have a look, will we? Before we do, Laravel is my core framework from a logic, middleware, all that kind of stuff. All of the application stack, Vue from a reactive perspective. So the whole application is fully reactive, and I landed on Vue.js for that. It is a single page application. It's got baked in authentication. It's fully API for just, and I won't get into this today, but all of the logic is, all of the user interfaces with the logic through a secured API. And then there's a RESTful API separate that users can hook into, okay? So that was the architecture of the application. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just, so you get, you know, what rConfig is and what it's doing and the problem it's solving and that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to walk you through V6, right? And just show you some of the components and how I built it, right? Using the components that you guys gave up. So page expired. Okay, I had this up for a little while. All right, here's the dashboard. Clean, pleasant, populated, right? A little bit busy, lot going on here, but the way I see it, having been a network engineer, we like busy dashboards, right? So kind of at a glance, and again, everything in here is reactive, live updates from the backend API, very responsive, very quick, right? But you can see a lot here in the interface. What I wanted to do was just go through the overall layout of the dashboard and then show you some of the cool things that I've implemented, right? You can even see the kind of getting started area there that you've got in one of your components. I'm sorry, I'm going to apologize a lot as I don't refer to the component names specifically. I got them in there, I tweaked them for my needs, and I'm happy with the way it is, right? But so as I said, a lot going on here, right? So I'm just going to go through some of the things. So we look at the devices. So a data table, all right? So you can see immediately I've used some of the key components from the data table, the toolbar, the search function, you know, it all filters, all that kind of stuff, right? If I just clear this, clear all filters, sorting, pagination, and this is one of my favorite features, right? The slide out window from the side, and I use this extensively throughout the application. I've had feedback from users; they really like it because it gives them that experience of workflow coming out from the side to create more devices or whatever they're doing and get back into the workflow then straight away, right? That there's not some big modal popping up in front of them that gives them that abstract feeling, right? So they really like this. Let's have a look at a few other things. So that's devices, templates. I'm going to show you something that took me, I got to admit, right, took me a little while to figure out. But once I did, it just blew my users away. And that's the Monaco Editor, right? Now, you guys appear to have this in a React component. I had to hand roll it with Vue.js, okay? And import the Monaco Editor and do all sorts of crazy stuff. But it's very stable. It's fully functional. I'm going to start building some more color coding into some of the templates we've got for Cisco configs and different things. But you guys will know this, right? The cool thing about the Monaco Editor, it's like VS Code Lite. And when I say that to my users, and many of them who are using VS Code can do Control Ds and Control Fs right there in the user interface, because some of these guys have really long, like 20,000 lines of configuration that they want to get through or filter or whatever. They absolutely love it. And then when you start adding in features like full screen, well, that becomes really cool for them, right? So as a network engineer, I can now go full screen. I've got kind of color coding across the configuration. I can use standard VS Code, kind of Control Ds and Control Fs and S's and things like that, and really get through. So my work is now a flow. It's not a start, stop, move here, move there, right? So, dark mode, line numbers, all that kind of cool stuff implemented, download configuration. So it's very intuitive as well, right? And again, it's because of the work you guys put in making those components accessible, right? And also, I'm going to say the demos. So sometimes I went to the HTML demo because I rolled it myself in Vue.js. I'm going to have to take all of the HTML and then start seeing where I'm going to populate certain reactive elements and different things, right? Sometimes I went back to the React demos to see how did the PatternFly guys design this to work, and then go and design it in Vue.js, if that makes sense. So that worked in my favor, I guess, as well. What else did we do? Standard data tables, tags, schedule tasks. Sorry, you'll realize I'm not going through what each one of these are, but the wizard, they love the wizard, right? So if I want to create a scheduled task, it's a wizard experience, okay? And in a scheduled task, there's one of 9, 8, 11 tasks you can create, right? And in any one of these tasks, depending on the item you select, you click next, you add some data, but then it starts to become contextual. The wizard starts to become a contextual experience, right? And again, made easy by the kind of reactivity of Vue.js, right? Just call a component if a certain value is true or whatever. But I think the experience of for me developing this was actually really easy because the components were easy to just come together. Put the wizard in a modal, create the wizard steps, 5 steps, right? And then just start populating components into that wizard. Now, the hard part then was, spitting out all of the wizard data at the end, capturing all that through the flow, but that's just development work, right? That's fine. And those nice little touches, right? Again, the feedback is this is an experience where I do a task verification up to 100%. And that's legitimate. Sometimes I question myself, does that look too fake or false that I'm just putting it in for fun, the kind of progress bar? But no, it's legitimate. There's checks on the data to make sure that, complies with JSON format and a bunch of different things, right? So, and they can save that task, right? Task goes into the scheduled tasks, whole bunch of logic on the back end to make that run through cron jobs and different things, right? So that's fine. Watching my time, and I'm gonna bring you to one or two more places. Our whole compliance section is based on looking at router compliance, switched compliance, right? If I want to see a certain line of code in my configuration output, does it comply or not? And then we use some of the code blocks to give us that feedback, right? In terms of if I want to look at more detailed information around the actual results. So we're using that. And I'm going to skip down to settings. And settings then, its own area, right? Quite busy, a lot going on here in settings. Might have to redesign this at some point because there's potentially too much going on, but it's okay for now. System settings, device credentials. We've got a TFTP server. What did I want to show you here? REST API access. So we've got whole documentation set around REST API, import, export, backup and restores. These kind of helpful. Something I wanted to get to, which is the kind of product flow wizard that you guys have, but I didn't quite get there. But at least I can put these things in, certain information boxes that I can remove permanently from the UI if they don't want to see it again in different things. Help. Oh, the most important thing, which was a big deal for many of my users, was dark mode, right? And I do remote support sessions with a lot of users on can't connect to this device, can't connect to that device, whatever it is. And they absolutely, most of them have dark mode turned on, right? Anybody who's working in code probably has dark mode. So it took me a couple of weeks to again roll my own on the dark mode capability. But now that it's done uniformly across the entire experience, and they absolutely love it, right? Finally, feedback, forms, help. Anything else that I wanted to show you here? Oh, in the search. And I don't think he had this specifically, but I think I did lift it from the top of the PatternFly docs page there. So I kind of did a little bit of a inspect the code, see what's going on here. I like that experience, right? And then, bring it in here, and that works too. So guys, I am unbelievably grateful for this work. So are my users. It's used in networks all over the world. And I just hope that you guys can see the value it's creating for these network administrators. So I hope that wasn't too fast and you caught most of it.
No, I think that was a whirlwind, but it was awesome. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? Or I'll add that I think in just a few minutes you'll see a presentation of the React implementation of that search feature you're talking about. So you're a step ahead of us. That's great. But yeah, you're getting a lot of praise in the chat if you're not looking at it. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
I have one quick question if I can. Really impressive. Thanks for the demo. That's really cool to see. And yeah, we were looking at that search, like, this isn't out yet. How did you get this? But yeah, the one question I had is, it's cool to see how you've basically re-implemented everything in Vue. And I was just curious if you landed on Vue before you switched to PatternFly, or the fact that we've got this functionality built into React. If you had any thoughts around, obviously we're all in on React on our side. Yeah. So just your thought or your decision making there to pick up Vue.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what it was is I think I landed on Vue and PatternFly v3 together, and I'm not sure. Did you guys have React in v3? I don't think you did you? So I think that was it. And
primarily
when
Angular
I decided, you didn't have Angular either, Nicole, was it? No.
No, I think it was primarily Angular at the time.
Oh, was it? Oh, I see. No, I
think later in the game.
Right. So I think I was at a point early 2019 where it was pick a reactive framework. I'm happy with Vue. I learned that. Put v3 around Vue, or the other way around, whichever way you like to look at it. And then when I did the migration, the refactoring to v6, it was, well, I had to do two things actually. I had to refactor v3 to v4 and Vue 2 to Vue 3. Right. So I mean, talk about bring all the world's problems on yourself. But that's what I did, right? And I learned a bunch of stuff. But so
makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, look, I appreciate your time. If anybody wants to connect, I'm on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, ping me afterwards. Nicole, I think you're going to share the slides anyway. But if you want to kick it around, it's v6demo.rconfig.com, and that link is in the deck as well. So thanks so much, guys. Really, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. All right, with that, let's see. Next up on the agenda is the core updates. And let's see, I think the very first core update is going to come from Burundi. Are you ready for that? Burundi? I can't hear you yet. Not yet. I saw you come off mute though.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh,
Fabulous.
I don't know why my mic dropped, but yes, I am ready. Thank you. So let me
Fabulous.
just switch over my tab here. So I guess I'll be pretty brief. So we had a request to enhance accessibility of status indication for the banner component. I don't know if folks remember, but previously we were using just color to convey status, which wasn't quite ideal. This enhancement provides an additional affordance besides color to allow colorblind users to detect status. So I'm just going to scroll down here. So this new solution now includes an icon as a visual reference for status in addition to the original color indication that we had previously. And there is a supporting screen reader text, which can be applied by a class pf-screen-reader to convey the meaning for that icon. And that pretty much concludes the update for the banner.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up, an update from Eric.
Hello. Let me share my screen real quick. So, likewise to the banner, we had a request for some of our form controls, text input and text area for our HTML library. Essentially, the request was an alternative styling to our read-only inputs. So we now have a plain read-only variant, and currently you may be able to see our previous read-only variant has that light gray background with that bottom border, and retains the same sort of padding. You can still focus it, so you can tab to it, you can click on it, it'll receive focus. Our new plain read-only variant removes that background color, removes that bottom border, removes some of that padding. So it looks, when you're just looking at it, it looks kind of like normal text on the screen, but it can still receive focus when you tap to it via keyboard or if you click on it with the mouse. And like I mentioned, this is in the input for the HTML library, as well as, scroll down, the text area in the form control component. And that is also about it for the update to the form control, the read-only plain variant.
Thank you. All right, next up is Sarah. Some more core updates.
Great. I will share. I'm going to talk about a couple of components. First one is the icon component. This is a component meant to create consistent spacing around an icon or a spinner. So sometimes you may have an icon that you're going to swap out for another icon, and they have slightly different aspect ratios or sizes, and the same with progress spinner. So this will let you hold a consistent space in case those are swapped out. And there are a few modifiers. The size modifiers will change the size of the box containing the icon, and then that will flow down to the icon, unless you have, you can also size the icon within the box. That's what this example down here is. Then there are also status colors that can be applied to the icons, and an inline version in case your icon is inline with text. And then the in progress modifier will set the icon to be hidden, and you can, and the subcomponent holding the progress spinner will be then shown. I think that's everything for that. And then I'll go on to the second one is an enhancement to the page. So previously we still have this note here reminding everyone that in order to make the page full height, all the ancestors of the page need to have a height 100% on them. Otherwise it won't stretch the full height of the window. But we've actually added a new feature, which is the full height page modifier. Adding this will put a couple classes onto the page, or a couple attributes. So it's going to set the height to 100 VH, which is the vertical height of the viewport height. That will stretch it out to fill, even if all the ancestors don't have 100% on them. However, just in case it is contained in something like an iframe, then we've set the max height to 100% so that it won't get too big. And I think that is everything.
I think James has a question for you, Sarah.
Yes. So I'd like to talk to you, Sarah, about that. The 100 view height works for desktops. On mobile, 100 view height doesn't work because they don't include the title bar of the browser. And so I have a couple workarounds and documentation on how to handle that, and it might be worth taking a look at before this gets released.
Okay, yeah, I'll ping you after the meeting and we can talk.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next, Michael has a couple updates from core as well.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sometimes I have problems with these headphones. Okay, first up is we have this really hidden deep in the dark corners of the CSS, an override, a pretty egregious override to the font size on the HTML element. This was added when PatternFly 4 was created to allow PatternFly 4 and 3 to coexist together happily in an application, and for a style that came from PatternFly 3 to not impact PatternFly 4. And that is still in place as we've moved through releases. In our upcoming major release, this is something that we look to remove. But this can cause other problems if maybe an application is using another design system or CSS framework or something like that to include some styles, and they run into this line, which I'll make this a little bit bigger. It's so basically we have all these comments to describe kind of, hey, this is why we're doing this. And basically we're setting font size to unset and important. And so if something is styling the HTML element and setting font size, we're going to smash that pretty much. And so we had a use case for someone who wanted to be able to set this and not have the style impact them, and a handful of ways that we do it. Basically, we just implemented a CSS custom property there to look for PF level root font size. And if that's set, then that's red here. Otherwise, we would leave it unset just to the default. So, and since this variable doesn't exist in PatternFly, it fails by default and sets unset. So applications can use it if they want to. So if you've ever run into that, there's a workaround. And again, we'll hopefully just remove this. And starting next year, the first release, like Nicole mentioned, that won't be there. And then last is just a new state for the notification badge, which is primarily used with the notification drawer. I suppose there could be other uses for that. But previously, before we created the masthead component, the expanded state of the notification badge was handled by the page header component, which was the former place where you put your logo and all your mastheady stuff and tools and all that kind of thing. And there was an element that held the notification badge that you could apply an expanded state to. And when we moved to the masthead, we realized that wasn't the ideal setup, and so we took that as an opportunity to add this expanded state to notification badge. And so it's pretty cool. Here's what it looks like. These are the default with account, and then this is what the buttons look like when they're expanded. So effectively, they match the hover and focus styles, with the exception of the red state, where there's no blue or red. The expanded style applies a light gray background just to indicate that this is has currently opened something. And so feel free to, I believe we're adding that in this current release in the React components. So someone can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but feel free to add that in when it's available, just to give a visual indicator that the notification drawer or whatever you're using it for is expanded. That's it.
All right. All right, now we have a number of updates from the React devs. We'll start first with an update from Dallas.
Yeah, so I have with status for the number input. Let me share my screen real quick here. This is what it looks like here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a few different statuses. This is the success. You have a warning and error status. It gets added in the validated property here, and you can see how we can set that. Typically, when you see this error status, it won't let you submit a form or something. So kind of depends on how you want to use it. I see it as like, maybe you have a certain thing like drives, and you're like, if you're having too many, you want to give them kind of a little notice that, hey, maybe you're getting close to a limit or something, and then maybe we've hit that limit. Any questions on that?
All right. Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, next up we have, yep, Andy's here. We have a few React updates from Andy.
Sounds good. All right, let me just share my screen. Okay. All right, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so the first thing I have to demo for all of you today is just a button with count feature. And this new feature, it was requested mostly as a result of just a previous use case where we're looking to have a toggle button that would show the number of issues, for example. And so this became the button with count. And the count over here on the right-hand side uses the badge object. And the way we would do that is just by having, if within the demo, you can create a badge count object, and using the isRed, count, and class name attributes of the object, you can pass that in as a count options prop within the button. And this will map towards the interface that was designed within the button. And what that allows you to do is interact with the badge as an object within the button. And so from there, you're able to increase and change the count as you see fit based on your own needs. So that's the button with count. The second one I have to show is the search input. The search input one, the new feature here is the one with the expandable button. And now what we previously had was just a bunch of different search inputs that were full width, or you could customize your own width. But what we now have today is the ability to expand that search input by clicking on it as a button. And what this allows you to do, as you can see here, we can also collapse it again. And also, I'd like to thank Austin for collaborating with me on this one, as this was not all on my own. But What you can do now is you can toggle, like I said, the expanding or collapsing of the search input, just using some of these props down here with expandable input and on change. And furthermore, just to add on to this really quickly, we're hoping to have this as a new demo in the masthead as well, given that that's also going to be a new, currently a beta component, I believe. So stay tuned to see this as a new demo in the masthead if it's not already. And lastly is the login page. A new feature that we added was the header utilities in login page. And I'm just going to show that really briefly over here first. As you can see, this is our current login page, and what we now have is this header utilities. Currently, it's designed to be a select drop-down menu where you could see a bunch of different languages that we could choose from. And if we select them, it's not going to update that just yet, and I'll explain why. But here we can provide the user with a lot of different options. They could choose different languages, and this could also be a place where they could take actions in general. And the reason for that is because, as we see in the demo down here, I've designed it to be a select option, as I described before, where ideally you would have some sort of way to communicate your selection with the rest of your interface. But this is more so just to have as a demo. But what I mean by having multiple different types of actions performed is that header utilities is very general. So you could put this as a button, you could put this as select, and it's more so a space for us to design different types of login pages for users. And that is all.
All right, thank you. All right, next, a couple of updates from Tatani.
Good morning. All right, so the first update I have to share, this is implemented by Dominic. He implemented a required feature for the checkbox. So here you can see that when we set the prop is required, then we have the red asterisk to show that the checkbox was a required input. Okay, and then the next one that I have to share with you is one of our next components in React. So we're starting to create new versions of our dropdown like components to use the menu under the hood. So the dropdown is the first one that we are have started to work on. So over here, you can see that we have, you can look when you go to our website, you click on React Next on the dropdown page. That's where the documentation lives for the next variation of the dropdown. So this component is a little bit more flexible than our old component. You can see here that for the toggle, you can pass in a menu toggle, any menu toggle you'd like for the component, and that would be the toggle that renders. So over here is just the regular menu toggle. And then you can pass in some drop-down items in a drop-down list. And then also, like I mentioned, the toggle is flexible, so you can pass in here one of our menu toggles with the, this one's the kebab variant. Then here's just an example of a grouped dropdown. So in here you would use, you'd add a divider. And another example of descriptions. Okay, so that's what I have to show for the new variation of the dropdown. So this is a beta component. So if anyone wants to experiment with using this and provide feedback, since it's a next variation, you would need to import it from this React Core next path. Yeah, so that's all I have.
All right. If nobody has any questions, then we will move on to some updates from Katie.
All right, let me share my screen. Make sure it's all right. I think that should be sharing. So first up, we have the first iteration of a new page on our demos page. This is going to be showcasing a lot of different setups for filters combined with like a table, so in a toolbar. So the first demo we've got is filtering with search input. So you've got the search input here and it will filter the table based on what you type in. You should just be doing just a regex match for the best fit for the node. You get all your US nodes there. This example also features a bulk select checkbox, so you can select with the checkboxes and it will update the state based on what gets selected. The second demo is filtering with a single select, which is just for the status in this case, so if you want just a graded status. And lastly is a location select, which is a checkbox select for filtering. And this one will OR, so if you click multiple locations, you can get Brno or Boston results in this location column, and clear all filters will still work. This is the first iteration. There's actually, I think, 3 or 4 more demos coming this sprint, and some refinements to like how the bulk select checkbox works, which is a little bit wonky. And I think that's it for these filter demos. Next up is a bug fix for an issue, console warning people are running into when using strict mode with our popper component, which is used under the hood for a lot of different components and also directly in these composable menu demos. So the resolution for this error, we've got 2 different methods you can use. First up, you can either use references to get by this issue in strict mode. So instead of just passing the trigger and popper, you use the reference prop and manually render the toggle, and also pass in the popper and a new popper reference prop. If you pass all of those, this will get by that strict mode error. The other method, which is what all of our other components that use popper under the hood will have available, is this remove find DOM node new flag. If you pass this in, then it will wrap the trigger and popper in an extra div so it can internally use references instead of having the issue with using the find DOM node call, which was throwing the error in strict mode. So you've got 2 available methods for that. The easier one's going to be this flag prop, and in a future breaking change release, we'll be making this the default, so you won't have to include it. And lastly, got a quick update for editable labels. This is an improvement to the keyboard functionality of this. So if you go over to this label 3 and click enter, you can edit the label and click enter again to shift focus back. The focus wasn't quite working properly, so this is now properly working, and if you hit like escape, it will cancel the whole edit. And tab and shift tab will now still work and go remain focused on the label after you've done editing it. And I think that's it from me.
All right, great, thank you. And then I think the last of the React updates today is going to come from Eric.
Hello again. Let me share my screen one more time. So the first update we have is for our expandable section component. Previously, with this component, you kind of only had the choice to have the show more toggle with the actual content hidden until you click it, it shows. You click it again, it hides it back again, and that's true for all of our previous examples that we have shown on our website. The new beta feature is a truncate variant. So with that, you essentially can have a certain number of lines actually shown at first with the trailing ellipsis, with the show more toggle expanding the rest of that content. So with this demo here, we have some lorem ipsum text with the default of 3 max lines being shown. If you click show more, it reveals the rest of that content. And you can customize that to kind of, to an extent, have however many lines you'd like with the truncate max lines prop. We'll scroll down here, you can see I have it commented out now, but if I uncomment it with truncate max lines equals 1, it now only shows that 1 line with everything else hidden until I click show more. And then our second update is a new component, the timestamp component. Switch over to this tab here. This is for our HTML library right here. Go ahead, James.
You're still muted, James.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt here, but on the other one, when you mentioned the truncate, does the truncate component now support truncating multiple lines? Or is it just this section?
I believe it's only the expandable section. If anyone correct me if I'm wrong.
So looking at the truncate docs, it doesn't support max lines. I'm hoping it does, because we've actually had several designs from designers where they want to show like 2 lines max and then have it truncate. But currently it doesn't support that, so I was wondering if this might make it into the truncate component.
I think the truncate component is currently just designed to truncate a string.
Right.
It doesn't know anything about lines. So that you want to truncate it, but you don't want to provide the ability to reveal the additional lines like this.
I don't know about revealing them, but in several of our designs, especially with cards, when you have a long description, the designs came out and they basically said we want to show 2 lines and then the ellipsis, right? Because cards are kind of narrow.
Yeah.
And doing it on 1 line, you know, it doesn't quite look as good as if you had 2 lines and then the ellipsis. And so if this functionality is available in truncate, we would make use of it.
Yeah, so we created this, you know, we did debate like where should this live, because we had gotten this request to have basically the ability to show and hide block text like this. And we decided to make this as part of the expandable section, more like a, you know, an expansion, a progressive disclosure kind of approach. So I guess with the case that you're talking about, the question I would have is if you truncate that description, how is the user going to get to the full description? And that was the thinking there. So I'd be glad to connect with the designers offline and
okay. I think our thought was when you click on the card and it takes you into that item and then you can see the full description. But to keep all the cards kind of the same height, even though you might have a lot of description in one or the other, truncate it 2 lines would look good, is what we got.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question. So yeah, the second update is our new timestamp component. Right here, right now, I'm showing the HTML page for the component. Pretty simple. It's just a simple span element with the PFC timestamp class applied, and inside that is a time element with a PFC timestamp text class applied. And if you want the styling with the dashed underline and the hover, the pointer on hover, you just add in PFM help text to that outer span. For our React implementation, we currently have a lot of good amount of customization for you should you need it, as well as some flexibility to kind of further customize it to your own kind of needs. By default, if you have if you have a timestamp component with absolutely no props passed in, it'll just take that current moment in time as the date time for it, and it has a default formatting for both the date and time, which shows month, day, year, and then hours, minutes, and seconds, plus AM or PM for the time. For customization, we have a few props for formatting. We have a date format and a time format prop, as well as a display suffix prop to kind of further customize it as you need. The date and time format props, if you pass both in, it'll display date and time to an extent however you'd like. If you pass only one in, it'll only show that one. So you pass in date format, it'll only show the date. Vice versa for the time format, that'll only show the time if you only want the time displayed. And we also have a custom format prop to even further customize that formatting than kind of what those two props allow. And we have a tooltip. By default, it will show UTC time, which you can also customize the suffix of that UTC if you want. And if you're using a library like datefns, if you want to have something like 1 hour ago displayed, you can pass in your own kind of custom content to the tooltip instead of having the kind of the default time formats that we have. I showed a little further up. And you can also customize the tooltip to, if you don't want UTC time per se, you can customize the tooltip to say whatever you want. And here I have 31st of October 2022 for Halloween. And that's kind of a quick rundown of the timestamp component, but this is also in beta, so feel free to kind of play around with it. If you have any suggestions, concerns, issues, or anything like that, definitely reach out, let us know about it.
All right, thank you. And we timed that pretty perfectly. That brings us to the top of the hour. I'm just going to share out the relevant links. I'll send out a recording of this meeting along with all of the slides in PDF form so you can access the links to the PatternFly mailing list. So please, the link to join that is right here. Or reach out to me if you would like the link to that. You could also import the PatternFly community calendar. It's public and it includes all of our public events, so you can keep track of if dates change for things like community meeting in the future. And there's my contact information if you'd like to present or have any questions about the meeting. Our next development office hours are on Wednesday, October 12th. So maybe we'll see you there. But that's a great place to bring your questions and feedback. But until then, thanks everyone for coming and for this lively meeting. We'll see you all next month at the October community meeting.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.